writers are writing so that we can see where we are blind, where we need to take the light, where we are making mistakes, and we need to help the world to change. My Lord, tell me where to keep your bride. This particular poem is actually a lament on the miscarriage of justice, the destruction of justice, the distortion of justice, the sale of justice, the misuse of justice, which has brought our nation to where it is today. This is a challenge for Nigerians for the moment, or at the moment, and it will continue to be until we are able to fix the justice system. Hello and welcome once again to Dul Johnson's Creative Talks. I thank you for having been a part of this program, and if you are new to it, you are very, very specially welcome. We've been talking for quite some time, and I've been talking about the importance of reading and how literature impacts on our lives, how it broadens our vision, our horizon, and our understanding of the world around us. And I have talked about fiction and drama. And although I'm not a poet, I've decided that I should say a bit about poetry, because after all I teach poetry and I have been a critic of poetry, so there's quite a bit I can say about it. So I welcome you to this particular edition. And like I said, if you are new, even if you've been part of us, please feel free to make your comments in the column below, put your questions that you want me to answer. Do not ask me to teach you how to write poetry, because I'm not gifted in that area. I'm not going to teach how to write poetry, but other forms of writing. I've said I will continue to do that. But I will make sure I answer your questions, so I get somebody who is a specialist in that area to help me answer your questions. And then, of course, I'd like you to like and share to as many links or persons as you can. Thank you very much. Now, so let's talk about poetry. If you have had any brush with literature at all, you would probably have, that is literature in a classroom. You would have probably known or heard that many years, centuries ago, all of literature was considered poetry, and I think that is evidence to be found even in existing works. If you read, say, stories that were written like 5, 6, or even 1,000 years ago that are published, you are likely to see an example is the Canterbury Tales. If you read that, you will see the way it is structured as if it is poetry. The same thing you would see in play texts that were written many centuries ago. You would see that they are structured like poetry. So it means poetry has been very important in the development of literature. And in any case, I have emphasized on this channel the interconnectedness of the three forms of art. So this is to say that poetry is important. And if you go back to, other episodes that have been transmitted, even if you missed them, try to go back and check how I mentioned and connected the coexistence of poetry, drama, and prose in every work that can be described as beautiful. Now, so talking about poetry, like every other form of art, is written all over the world. And I would like you to spread your tentacles as far as you can, so that you do not read only Nigerian poems or African poems. I want you to go beyond. But of course, because of the limited time I have and my choice, I'm going to zero in on a Nigerian poet as an example. But that is not to say that's the only thing that exists. Indeed, you would, I will definitely mention quite a number of poets on the African continent. But even to take you back to the rest of the world, I think as a student, I was exposed to poems from all over the world, European poetry. You would go back to poets like John Dryden, John Donne, William Wordsworth, John Keats. Crossover to America, you would find the poets like Emily Dickinson, quite a number. The names are not coming as freely as I would like to, but they're all over the world. And then, of course, I have also enjoyed reading a great number of poets from China, especially when I was getting free copies of what is called Chinese literature. It's a combination of short stories and poems. And the one thing that all of those works have in common, and not just amongst the poems, but also in connection with other forms of literature, is that they are addressing human situations, human conditions, certain issues that need to be addressed, either to be corrected or to be pushed forward, and so on and so forth. That is to say, my argument that literature actually impacts on life continues to grow stronger in my mind, in my head, and makes me to want to continue to share ideas with people so that they can write for the reason that they want to push the world in the positive direction, in the right direction. Writers are writing so that we can see where we are blind, so that we can see where we need to take the light to, so that we can see where we are making mistakes and we need to help the world to change. And that's what I'm going to do today with poetry. But as I said, I want to just anchor it in African poetry. So let's come back to the beginning of written African literature. Our poets, as a matter of fact, were accused of copying the West. That is the way I was taught as a student. In reading those poems, though, I didn't quite see how they were copying the West. But perhaps it is because of the style in which they wrote. But as far as content and purpose were concerned, these people were pushing the views of Africa, the pain of Africa, the concerns of Africa, and protesting. Indeed, we used to call them then poets of protest. In fact, all of our literature was seen as protest literature or engaged literature, as they would put it in the French expression. So, if you read the early African poets, the likes of the Diop brothers, Birago Diop, David Diop, people like Awuno Williams, people like Wole Soyinka, people like J.P. Clark, Gabriel Okara, Leopold Sédar Senghor, who became the president of Senegal, and who was indeed maybe not the founder, but I think he was the one who promoted the idea of negritude very, very strongly. And what was negritude about? It's a protest against the West and the way the West was treating Africa. It was a protest against colonialism. It was a protest against the denigration of Africa. And all of these other poets I mentioned, if you read them properly, whether you were protesting or not, they were, or you were promoting Africa in the way that you think Africa should be seen by the rest of the world, and not to be denigrated, not to be seen as nothing except, of course, good to be exploited. That was what the poets tried to present in their poems. So they promoted the beauty of Africa, they regretted what had happened to Africa, and they tried to encourage, not even try, they encouraged readers, of course, and the idea was readers should carry the ideas forward. That was the point. If you wrote a poem and it was taught in a classroom, you expected that the students who were taught your poem will multiply the idea by taking it, across their own space and encourage other people to do likewise. So that is the kind of thing that poets did. And it is not just, as I said, all of the ones that I've mentioned are poets from West Africa. But indeed, it's the same thing if you go down South Africa, East Africa, North Africa. All of these areas were represented by poets in the first generation of published or written works of literature, and particularly now talking about poetry. From every angle of Africa, poems poured and were published and were read and taught in schools, and were, of course, they went across the world. So they were doing their best to promote the image of Africa, to correct the perception that was presented of Africa, and to fight against what was the destruction of Africa, and hopefully to mend, the path and make sure that Africa picked up and get to where it ought to. Unfortunately, we haven't really picked up to get to where we want to get to. So this is why I am coming now to Nigeria, but I'm using Nigeria only as an example. If you take a look at our poetry, from the first generation I've mentioned, let's even move on to the generations that followed, and up till today, the poets are still looking at the problems of their society, which is why we are going to focus on one for this discussion. But think about, poets like Odia Ofemun, Tanuri Ojaide. Indeed, in Nigeria, we have thousands of poets who are working. The two I've mentioned are more concerned with the problems of the Niger Delta, for example. And there are hundreds of others, working in that area. Nimobasi, and so many others. The names are too many to mention. Okay, so this particular poem that I want us to talk about is a very long poem, so I'm not going to even read it, but I will just take a few lines from it, where it is on the social media, and I think it's widely spread, and anybody that wants to read it will be able to find it easily. Now, it is a poem by Ni or Sundare, and it is entitled, "My Lord, tell me where to keep your bribe." My Lord, tell me where to keep your bribe. Let's think about the phrase "my Lord," or let's think about the word Lord. Lord, of course, for most of us, we're talking about God, right? The Lord refers to God. Of course, there are, let me say, aberrations in the use, such as landlord and the rest of it, but that's beside the point. Now, it is true that the judges are also addressed as my Lord. Isn't that an irony of sorts? There is a reason for that title, because they are supposed to dispense justice, which is what we also expect of God, what God does, what the Supreme Creator does. So we expect that judges will dispense justice. And so the title Lord, or my Lord, it should or was apt, at least at some point. Maybe it's still apt in other lands, but we're talking about Nigeria now. This particular poem is actually a lament on or about the miscarriage of justice, the destruction of justice, the distortion of justice, the sale of justice, the misuse of justice, which has brought our nation to where it is today. Where there is justice, the kind of things that we experience in Nigeria today wouldn't be happening. So this poem is written so that Nigerians can read this poem and they can see for themselves how the misuse of the justice system has brought us to where we are, and whether we are going to be in any position, to help. And I suppose this is one reason why the first place I think Ni put this poem was on the social media. I didn't hear of it anywhere until I saw it in the social media, and it has been making the rounds in the last almost 1 year. So this is to say, it is burning like fire, and I hope it does what he intends for it to do. I also want to make a comment before I read a bit of this. Now, I mentioned in one of the previous discussions that the reason that people don't love poetry is because of the language, the choice of words, the highfalutin language that is used by most poets, the complicated imagery, and sometimes structure of that makes it difficult for ordinary people to read. The good thing about Ni Oshundere is that he is one poet that decided right from the beginning of his career as a poet to say poetry is for everybody. Indeed, it is even for the ordinary man. Oh, sure. If you are writing because you want to influence people, you want to affect the world in a positive way, you should make it accessible to almost every reader. So Ni's poetry, in spite of the fact that sometimes, of course, he goes back to take some cultural, traditional images, but they do not in any way affect your enjoyment of the poem at all. His work is not affected whether, even when he brings in Yoruba expressions, they do not interfere with your enjoyment and understanding of the work. And indeed, of course, poetry is more like songs, aren't they? So he makes it even sweet for you to enjoy as you read it. But he uses words that are simple. However, because it is poetry, it is the arrangement of the words, even in the choice. Even when he's going for the simplest of words, he makes sure that he chooses the best of the simple words to illustrate what he wants to say, so that you can, get the meaning, enjoy reading, and then hopefully to propagate or take the message forward. So this poem about justice, I've read the title for you. It says, "My Lord, tell me where to keep your bribe." Are we supposed to be bribing lawyers? Absolutely not. Should we bribe lawyers? Should lawyers demand bribe? Well, I will leave that to your own decision. So he asks Do I drop it in your venerable chambers? So you see, venerable, a respected, highly respected place. Think about that. Your chambers are supposed to be a highly respected place. If we are going to drop a bribe there, what have we done? I think what we have done is rubbish the place. We have brought it down from. We've desecrated the place, if you want, right? But if that is what my Lord wants, that's what we are going to do. Do I drop it in your venerable chamber, or carry the heavy booty? The heavy booty. Booty is, of course, stolen stuff, stolen money, stolen material, or something that you go to war, conquer somebody, and then pack away his riches. That's a booty. Is that, and that's what it has used to represent bribery here. Of course, those who have those monies to use to bribe, naturally, if they worked for it, they wouldn't be giving it as bribery, to the judges. So obviously, this is a very apt use of the expression in this context. Or do I carry the heavy booty to your immaculate mansion? Immaculate again. Think about cleanliness. I mean, we talk about people dressing immaculately, or in immaculate white, and a suit or whatever. Something that should be respected, right? Clean and respected. That's the kind of place we should take the bribe to. The third line says, Shall I bury it in the capacious water tank? Aha. So, again, even in the recent times, we have heard about monies that have been looted and hidden in tanks. And of course, probably those tanks were dry at the time. And now, after some time, water seeps into it, and those monies are rotten. I have seen on video monies that were pulled out, and they are being fetched as if bread, had fallen in water. And absolutely. So he's bringing the reality that we have experienced into this point to tell you, the atrocity that the situation, that the destruction of law and justice in Nigeria has brought us to, right? Shall I bury it in the capacious water tank in your well-landed backyard? So the tank, of course, is in your backyard, hidden there so that nobody can get to see it. Or will it breathe better in the septic tank? Can you imagine the choice of words here? Will the money breathe better in the septic tank? What is a septic tank? Of course, I don't need to explain it, but if you do not know, go check your dictionary. It's a place where you shouldn't take anything to at all except your waste, not to talk of money, and so on and so on, so forth. And that is how the poem continues right down to, I go to the end, because that is where I think I want us to clinch the matter, where it now begins to, lay the blame on almost all of us. So, these monsters of mammon in their garish gowns, these monsters of mammon in their garish gowns. Okay, I'm sure, again, you probably need to check the words, but just think about the gown and its appearance. Okay, they are with all kinds of decorations, and of course, you expect that this should be an honorable appearance, and yet it is not. It doesn't sound like something pleasant to look at in this context, right? Unhappy the land where jobbers are judges. So people who do not actually qualify to be where they are, they're actually looking for jobs. They are doing jobs for people. They are not judges in the real sense of it. These are the people that are at the helm of affairs to truncate justice. That is the point being made here, right? Excuse me. Where impunity walks the streets. Where impunity walks the streets. Impunity, utter disregard for law and order, that's what it is. And indeed, if you have had the misfortune of driving on the road, say in big cities, and when you hear siren coming behind you or in front of you, you know the rest, what I'm talking about. Nah, this is what Nee is talking about. Okay? Impunity walks the streets. Precisely. Okay, so where impunity walks the streets, like a large invincible demon. Like a large invincible demon. Invincible means unconquerable. And that's the picture they give us. That's the image they use to threaten us, to cow us into, inaction, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here we go. Come Sunday, they troop to the church. Friday, they mouth their mantra in pious mosques. So on Sunday, they are in churches. On Fridays, they are in the mosques. Right? The same people who are going there to pull a wool over people's faces, right? They find the best places, they are given the best places to sit, the front, for example, or they are even given the pulpit to preach, and so on and so forth, to talk, to greet people. And yet, these are the people that the very next day, on a Monday, they are in their courts, in where they destroy justice. Oh, okay. But they pervert justice all week long. That's the point. But they pervert justice all week long and dig us deeper into the hellish hole. Nigeria is a huge corpse with milling maggot. What a picture. So you see, the point I'm making, my dear viewer, I wish I could write poetry like Neo Sundare. Maybe I should become a student under him if I can find the opportunity to sit with him. But the point is simply made. This is a poem. This is pushing you and me to think deep, think wide, think about this country. Are there any things we can do? Is there anything you in your small corner can do? Because when we read literature, we get knowledge. This, if you are able to read through this poem, your anger will know no end. And you will not want to actually tolerate the justice system the way it's going. Perhaps your brother is one. Perhaps your dad is one. Perhaps your mom is one. Perhaps your uncle is one. Perhaps your best friend is one. What can you do to help Nigeria become a better place? But of course, the fact that Nigeria is mentioned doesn't mean that this happens only in Nigeria. So wherever you read this poem, wherever you are, and you watch this episode, and you find this poem and read, are there situations like this in your country? It may not be from the justice angle. It could be from other angles of leadership in society. Is there anything this poem would invoke in you or evoke in you that can make you want to make a contribution, positive contribution to your society? This is a challenge for Nigerians for the moment, or at the moment, and it will continue to be until we are able to fix the justice system and many other systems. He has written about the justice system. Many of us are writing about other things that make the country not be the kind of place we want it to be. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to ask you to please look for this poem and read, and of course, go back and check out the other videos that I have, done on drama, on the review of other people's novels that I have read and the impact they have made on me and on other readers. Thank you very much, and God bless you for watching.